So once again, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Father.
And welcome to the 6th Sunday of Easter. We only have one more Easter Sunday, then Pentecost, and I'm going to be back in ordinary time. So that's kind of where we are right now, getting to the end of our Easter journey this year. And there's an interesting juxtaposition this year between this 6th Sunday of Easter and this weekend that we honor mothers, Mother's Day weekend. And maybe I'll touch on that. I want to draw that a little together for you a little bit. First of all, I want to acknowledge the mothers, and we're going to talk a little, I'm going to tell you a story about a mother, actually. It's from a movie. We're not too, it was sort of a medium class movie, not great, but it was interesting. It was kind of humorous and parts. And it was called A Mom's Evening Out. Did any of you see it? If you did. What happens is there's this woman, she's in her early 30s, who has a husband and 3 kids, 3 younger kids. And as you meet her at the beginning of this movie, there's this youngish mother is kind of thinking her life's sort of a failure, is what she thinks, And, because the house is not that neat, it's not that neat a house, but she's trying to get that. And she has trouble controlling the kids at times, and all this and so she's feeling overwhelmed, is what it really amounts to. So her husband, who's a smart man, and loves her, gets together with her and says, take an evening off, take an evening out, you and your girlfriends. She has 2 girlfriends she goes with still. And, I'll talk with the kids. Myself and the other 2 guys will talk with the kids and we'll keep things going. You go ahead and have a good evening, relax, And so that's the mom's evening out, is what it is, or night out, actually, what it is, mom's night out. And so they go out and they start, and as you can imagine, this is a semi-comedy, so you get a lot of things that are part of this misadventure. Is these 3 women go out to try to have a dinner and to sit down and relax a little bit, and all the things go wrong. They can't have reservations and all those things that go along. And they meet someone this, and they end up getting involved with the police, and the whole thing is gets all balled up, is what it amounts to. But through it all, this young woman begins to understand something, and she and her husband are talking at the end of the movie, and then she articulates it, that she really has not been a failure. She hasn't been. She has a husband who loves her, she has kids that love her, and that's a pretty good thing. And so the whole thing works down to that, you see. And through it, her husband is talking to her, and he tells her that it is through you, primarily, and me, but you, primarily right now at that age, that they're learning about what love is. You see? And you're doing a good job, because they understand it right now for their ages. They're young yet. And so she understands that her life has not been a failure. It is, as a matter of fact, a success. And so it has a happy ending in that sense. And that's something I'd like to touch on to you, this idea of love and where we learn about love. Because you hear about it in the readings, of course. John reading in the 2nd reading, Jesus in the Gospel. Where do we learn about love? And there are many different ways we learn about it, of course, in our lives. But one of the primary, first and most important ways we learn about love is from our mothers. I know I did. We need to understand what it is. And I think that's true, too, for the people who wrote those scriptures. Peter, for example, with his Cornelius, where did he learn that you could accept somebody like that? Remember, this is a Gentile. As a matter of fact, a Roman, not just a Gentile, but a Roman officer of the Roman military. Where did Peter learn to accept people like that? Because the God who loved them both was calling them together. And I would suspect his mother was in his background there. John, the guy who wrote the 2nd reading, we don't know a lot about his life, but we had a mother. And if he knew that God was love, I'm sure at some point early in his life he began to find that out from his mother. Jesus in the Gospel is talking, and this is part of the Last Supper discourse, and it's part of a long speech Jesus gives in John's Gospel. But he talks about this love between him and his Father, and him for them, and they need to show it in their own lives. And we know that Jesus, of course, has a special connection with his Father, and that's definitely part of that, an important part of that. But also, I think Mary was, don't you? His mother. You see, I think that's one of the reasons that this day, this weekend, this Mother's Day weekend, is the single most popular weekend for flowers. Bigger than Valentine's Day. Why, it's the Communication. It used to be telephones. Now we do other things, Twitter and all that stuff. But it's still the biggest communication day of the year. Bigger than Christmas, bigger than any of the others. I think because most of us, the vast majority of us, know that at some level of our being. That when we began to learn about love, it was from our mothers that we began to learn about it. You see? And that allows us to be loving in turn, or empowers us to be. And so maybe that's why we honor them this weekend. And as I said, it's a very, very fortuitous circumstance. This sixth Sunday of Easter and this Mother's Weekend, that these two things come together like this, because they illustrate something for us. The importance of learning about love and sharing love. Something we do first, and maybe primary first, at least in our lives, from our mothers. But it doesn't end there. I mean, for our own children, for our own friends, and for others, we need to show that as well. And so maybe, sisters and brothers, that's the thought to take from this weekend when we have these two events coming together, Sixth Sunday of Easter and Mother's Day weekend. That, first of all, we want to give thanks and gratitude for those for whom and from whom we learned about love and what love was and how the experience of love was supposed to be. And maybe, just maybe, we also need, therefore, to be empowered to be more of a sign of love for those in our own circle these days. So that love doesn't end, that love continues to grow. After all, love is the only thing that can change this world of ours for the better.